Wild Horses is one of the Rolling Stones' most beloved ballads, a song drenched in melancholy, capturing the pain of a love slipping away. Perhaps. But beneath the surface of this 1971 classic lies a deeper, more personal story, one tied potentially to the late Marianne Faithfull, who passed away on January 30, 2025, and who was Mick Jagger's greatest muse in the late 1960s, and at one point his greatest heartbreak. Hi, I'm Andy Fenstermaker, host of Poetic Wax, a weekly music history series and podcast where I dig into the vast record collection I've been building since the 1990s and explore the sometimes little told and little known history of a band, album, or song from within. This is the legend behind that fateful song, Wild Horses, how Marianne might have been the inspiration behind it. First, we must look at the origin, the song that almost wasn't theirs. By 1969, the Rolling Stones were in a period of transition. Brian Jones was spiraling out of control, and come July, he'd be dead. And the band was crafting what would become Sticky Fingers, an album blending country, blues, and rock into a somewhat new and raw sound. But Wild Horses had an unusual journey. It was almost never a Stones song at all. When the Rolling Stones cut the demo, they initially didn't think it was worth recording in studio for an album. Instead, they handed it to Graham Parsons, who, with the Stones, recorded it and put it on the Flying Burrito Brothers' 1970 album, Burrito Deluxe. But in the beginning, the music came first. Written by Keith Richards. He was missing his newborn son, Marlon, while on tour and penned a slow, mournful melody to express that heartache. When Jagger got involved, the lyrics took a slightly different turn, one that had little to do with fatherhood and, seemingly, everything to do with his turbulent, crumbling romantic relationship with Marianne Faithfull. And for that we must turn to Faithfull's influence, the possible real meaning behind Wild Horses. Jagger and Faithfull were the ultimate 1960s it couple. Beautiful, rebellious, and doomed. By 1969, their once glamorous love affair had been tainted by drug addiction, emotional distance, and heartbreak. That year, Faithfull overdosed on sleeping pills in Sydney, while Jagger was filming Ned Kelly. She slipped into a 6-day coma. When she awoke, her first words to him were, "Wild horses couldn't drag me away." It was a poetic and tragic moment. Whether Faithfull meant it as a declaration of love or despair is a bit uncertain, but Jagger seemed to remember it. When he sat down to write lyrics for Keith's melody, the phrase found its way into the song. More on that and a potential alternate history to it in a moment. Now we must look at the recording, a song drenched in sorrow. The song was recorded by the Stones in December of 1969 at Muscle Shoals Sound Studio, a legendary place where raw emotions seem to seep into every note. Jagger's vocals are unusually soft, almost broken. His delivery isn't that of a swaggering rock star. It's of a man mourning something he's losing, something that's slipping away. Keith's harmonies add a layer of sadness, and the delicate acoustic guitar, played by Richards, blends with the melancholic piano, creating one of the most vulnerable tracks in the Stones' catalog. Wild Horses, along with Brown Sugar and You Gotta Move, were recorded during the Let It Bleed sessions, prior to working on Sticky Fingers, the album which they'd release it on in 1971. Now, those sessions started in March of 1970. This was December 1969. So, first off, the timeline aligns. The song was written toward the end of the Faithfull-Jagger relationship, as things seemed to be spinning a bit out of control. Let's look at the aftermath. Love lost, legacy gained. By the time Wild Horses was released on Sticky Fingers in 1971, the Jagger-Faithfull relationship it was supposedly inspired by had crumbled. Marianne Faithfull had descended deeper into heroin addiction and homelessness. Jagger had moved on. The love that once defined swing in London was now just a painful memory. Faithfull herself later said that she felt Wild Horses was about her, but Jagger never confirmed it outright. Perhaps he didn't have to. The song seems to speak for itself, a supposed tribute to a love that couldn't last, to a woman who inspired some of the Stones' greatest music, and to the ghosts of the past that still linger in every note. But was this legend just a legend? It's also important to state that some accounts list it as being Jagger who uttered that famous phrase, "Wild horses couldn't drag me away," to Faithfull after she woke from the coma. Or maybe the words weren't uttered at all. And for that, we have to turn to 1993. In the liner notes of a 1993 compilation by the Rolling Stones, Jagger wrote, quote, "Everyone always says this was about Marianne, but I don't think it was. That was all well and over by then. But I was definitely very inside this piece emotionally." Keith Richards would continue, "If there is a classic way of Mick and me working together, this is it. I had the riff and the chorus line. Mick got stuck into the verses. Just like Satisfaction, Wild Horses was about the unusual thing of not wanting to be on the road, being a million miles from where you want to be." End quote. Jagger recounts that the relationship was over by then, but we also know that the timeline kind of doesn't align with that. Richard states that he came up with the chorus, which is that famed line, "Wild horses couldn't drag me away." So, was it about Richard's son? Was it about Marianne? Or something else entirely? Well, let's look at the song's lasting impact. Decades later, Wild Horses remains one of the most covered and most beloved songs in the Rolling Stones' quite long history. From the original Graham Parsons recording to covers by The Sundays, Alicia Keys, Elvis Costello, Lucinda Williams, Sheryl Crow, and even Susan Boyle, its raw beauty has touched generations. Elvis Costello with Lucinda Williams. At its heart, Wild Horses is still what it always was. A love letter to something lost, a longing, a whisper of regret, and the echoes of a love story that, despite everything, could never truly be erased. Whether the song was truly about Marianne Faithfull may never fully be revealed, or remembered accurately by the ones who were there. I like to think it was. It has that ring to it, that feeling of a love on the verge of being lost to history. And as this video is recorded, we get the news that Marianne Faithfull has passed away, January 30, 2025. A dark, smoky-voiced chanteuse who embraced a bohemian lifestyle and a more avant-garde and literary style that kind of kept her parallel to the spotlight, just outside, lurking in the fringes, yet an influence and inspiration to those in the know. I think it's about time to pour myself another glass of Pinot and move that needle back to the beginning of the song. And remember Marianne Faithfull, the possible muse behind the phrase, "Wild horses couldn't drag me away."